Hello everyone who is listening to the story on the YouTube channel Vietnamese Ghost Stories. Tonight, a friend of mine from abroad sent me a story that his family encountered, and I will name this story The Last Bus. Please listen together. My name is Daniel Reyes. I live in the northern suburbs of the city, a peaceful place with neatly trimmed lawns, middle-class families, and red maple trees in the fall. I am a senior at Lincoln High School, and recently I have to stay in extra SAT class every Tuesday and Friday night. That night it was raining lightly, the wind blew cold, whistling through the cracks in the walls and stone steps. I left the test center at 9:47 p.m. later than usual. The phone in my pocket vibrated. The screen showed only 1% battery left. No text messages, no calls. I shoved it into my hoodie pocket, pulled my hood up to block the wind, and walked quickly toward the bus stop. The 72 bus stop was right at the corner of Elm and Franklin. The streetlights there flickered on and off, emitting a strange electric hiss. The stench of garbage from the dumpster filled the rain. No one was there but me. I stood there for more than 10 minutes, my legs numb. Just as I thought I was going to call an Uber, the 72 bus loomed out of the fog. It looked strange, not like the bus I usually took. The headlights were dim, the windows were fogged, and the paint was peeling as if it had been sitting in a junkyard for a long time. I hesitated, but the cold wind whipped at my back, so I didn't think much of it. I stepped onto the bus. As soon as my feet touched the steps, an odd chill ran down my spine. There was no one inside, no driver, no passengers. I was about to back out when suddenly there was a bang. The door behind me slammed shut. I was startled, my heart pounding. At that moment, I didn't realize. At that moment, everything started to slip out of reality. I stepped deeper into the car. The seats were old, the fabric was torn, and there were places with something that looked like dried blood. The smell of mold mixed with a strange, fishy smell like rust mixed with a long-dead animal. I chose a seat near the middle of the car. Outside the window, the fog was so thick that I couldn't see the road. The scenery outside seemed to be erased from this world. After a few seconds, the engine roared. I was startled and looked up to see a man in a driver's uniform sitting in the driver's seat. I didn't know when he got in. I looked into the rearview mirror, but what I saw wasn't his eyes, but a pair of dark eye sockets, deep like two bottomless wells. The bus started moving. No one spoke. No sound except the wind and rain hitting the windows. I tried to calm myself down. Maybe it's an old bus. They're doing maintenance. Maybe the driver has an eye problem, I told myself. But things took a turn for the worse when the bus turned onto a road I had never seen before. No street lights, no signs, no houses, just a dark road that stretched on forever. I took out my phone, intending to turn on the flashlight, but it was dead. I looked at the seat across from me. At first there was nothing, but a few seconds later, a woman in a long white dress was sitting there for who knows when. Her hair was long, covering her face. She held an old leather bag in her hand. Her back was straight, motionless. I asked softly, "You just got in the bus?" No answer. I blinked. She was no longer sitting there. I stood up. The seat was empty, not a trace. But when I turned around in the last row, I saw something crawling up the bench. A dark figure, long limbs. It crawled like a spider, but as tall as a man. I shouted, "Stop the car! Let me get out!" The driver didn't react. His eyes were still staring straight ahead. Or rather, he had no eyes to look at. I banged on the door, stomped my feet, screamed. The car kept moving. Out the window, I saw a cemetery flash by. Only, it didn't follow the car. It repeated itself. It was like we were driving in circles through the same place, but in another dimension. Then, in the middle of that cemetery, I saw someone standing there. A boy in a school uniform, his face covered in blood, his eyes black and pupilless. And I realized it was my own image. I don't know how long I screamed. The image of the bloody boy kept playing in my head like a broken tape loop. The wind blew through the window as if someone was breathing on the back of my neck. I turned my head. No one. But the smell of death was slowly filling the air. The smell was unmistakable. The smell of rotting flesh, dried blood, and ashes. I lowered my head, trying to stop myself from vomiting. And then, from the row in front of me, came the sound of a child's giggle. I froze. I stood up, trembling as I walked toward the sound. A small hand reached out from the gap between the seats. A child's hand, black and curled with long, crooked fingernails. I backed away, and at that moment the whole car lurched. I fell to the floor, my head hitting the back of the seat. In a daze, I opened my eyes and saw every seat in the car was occupied. Each one was different, headless, burned black, still wearing school uniforms with a large hole in their hearts. They were silent, stiff, not looking at me, but I knew. They all knew I was here. I crawled toward the emergency exit at the back of the car, intending to break the glass and escape. But when my hand touched the glass, it melted like mud. I pulled my hand back. This car, it was no longer in the real world. Where was I? I could no longer feel anything from the city. No car horns, no lights, just a thick, bottomless darkness that seemed to be swallowing everything. I remembered my grandmother, who had raised me for a short time in Georgia. She had a small altar in the kitchen, often chanting in Spanish that I did not understand. One time, she looked at me very seriously and said, "There are buses that are not for the living. If you see a shadow of someone standing alone at a late stop, don't look, don't ask, and never get on a bus without lights." I got on that bus. A clatter sounded. The seat next to me sank, as if someone had just sat on it. I turned around. A woman. Her hair was loose. She was wearing a mourning dress. Her face was as white as if it had been painted with corpse powder. She slowly turned to me and whispered, "Your turn now. Were you? We believed it was just a normal night bus." She laughed, but her mouth didn't open. The laughter rang out from deep inside my head. I crawled back, stammering, I'm alive. I'm not dead. I'm not dead." The people on the bus turned around in unison. Their eyes were black. Their mouths were dry. And they all repeated the same sentence. "You're dead. You're dead. You're dead," I screamed. And suddenly the bus braked. The force of the impact sent me face first into the metal bar in front of the seat. My nose broke and blood gushed out. It hurt. I still felt the pain. I wasn't dead. I wasn't dead. I crawled to the door, punching it repeatedly. "I don't belong here. Let me go." No one responded, but this time, the door opened. I threw myself out of the bus, rolling onto the cold, wet pavement. I lay there for a long time, gasping for air, blood from my nose mixing with the rain. When I looked up again, the bus was gone. There was no trace, no tires, no watermarks, no taillights. There was only an empty street in the dark. I looked around. This was Maple Street, about a 10-minute walk from my house. I was back, or I thought. As I walked past the row of houses near the park, I saw a tattered poster stuck to a utility pole. It was so old that the ink had almost faded. I reached out and took it off and realized it was a missing persons notice. The name on it read, "Daniel Reyes, 17, missing since October 13. Last seen leaving his cram school at 9:30 p.m. I froze. What day is it? I pulled out my phone. It lit up again. The screen showed the date. Saturday, October 28, 2:41 a.m. I had been missing for almost 2 weeks. I don't remember how I walked home that night. My feet were muddy. My hands were shaking. The smell of dried blood on my collar had not yet faded. When I pushed open the door and entered the house, everything was dark. No one was there. Where were my parents? The kitchen light was still on. The microwave was flashing 12 o'clock, the kind of error that happens when the power goes out. But I swear this house was not the same as before I disappeared. Something was wrong, as if I was walking into a distorted version of my own house. I went upstairs and turned on the lights. My room was still the same: basketball posters, books, laptop. But there was something strange. The family photo on the bedside table. I wasn't there. My father was in the middle, my mother holding his arm. But the place where I should have been standing was empty. I checked my phone, text Mom. "Mom, I'm home. Where are you?" A few seconds later, the phone rang. But it wasn't Mom. An unknown number called. I picked it up. A child's voice whispered, "You shouldn't have gotten on that bus. We're not letting you get away now." I threw the phone on the floor. At that moment, the lights in the room flickered on and off. I ran into the hallway and the bathroom door swung open. There was no one inside, but the mirror was covered in blood writing. "Give us our seat back." I wanted to scream, to wake up, but this wasn't a dream. I was being pulled into a loop, an elaborate trap. And it started with that ghostly bus. The next morning, I went to school. Everyone looked at me like I was a ghost. The homeroom teacher, Miss Fields, approached. "Daniel, are you okay? You've been missing for almost 2 weeks." I nodded. My mind was still reeling. She didn't ask any more questions, but her eyes seemed to be hiding something. During class, I secretly Googled "missing school bus plus city plus news." A headline popped up. An old newspaper article from 1998. 5 students disappear on night bus, unsolved case. I clicked on it. The black and white photo was blurry, but the face of the child in the corner was the boy I saw through the bus window last night. The child was me. No, it couldn't be. I went to the city library, to the old newspaper archives. The old librarian named Margot looked at me strangely. "What are you looking for that makes you look so panicked?" "You need the articles about the bus disappearances." She looked at me for a long moment and then said softly, "You saw them, didn't you?" "Those kids weren't missing. They were taken away." "You sat in the seat of someone who hadn't passed on." A chill ran down my spine. Mrs. Margot led me into a small room behind the library. She opened a cabinet and took out an old box marked Bus 72, Unsolved Case. Inside were student photos, crime scene photos, police notes. One file gave me goosebumps. Student name, Max Holloway. Age 17. Missing October 13th, 1998. Bis 72. On the way home from tutoring. There was a handwritten note in the file. These kids all sat in the same spot, 5th row from the front, near the left window. Every time someone new goes missing, that spot is occupied by someone else before they disappeared. I looked at the seating chart. That was where I had been sitting. Margot said, "There's an urban legend. If a person sits in the seat of a restless spirit, the spirit is traded away, and the living person is dragged into the world of restless spirits." I whispered, "So, I'll be dragged down there?" "Not if you return what you accidentally took. You have to find a way to get Max back, or help him escape." That evening, I returned to the bus stop at the corner of Elm and Franklin, where it all began. The night wind whistled past my ears. There was no bus. I brought the photo of Max I had printed from the library and a white candle as Margot had instructed. I lit the candle, placed the photo underneath, and whispered, "Max, if you're listening, I'm not trying to take your place. Just tell me what to do." Silence. Then a cold puff of smoke came from behind, and a voice said, "It's getting late. Daniel, I don't just want you now." I couldn't breathe. The air around me was as cold as winter in July. From somewhere came the sound of metal grinding against rusty iron, like an old bus door opening. I turned, and it was just as I feared. The rusty yellow bus crept silently out of the fog, its dim headlights casting a pale yellow light onto the cracked pavement. There was no driver, no passengers, just the door waiting for me to get on. I wanted to run. My whole body screamed, "Don't get on there!" But something was pulling me back. Not my hands, not my chains. It was a memory. It was the feeling of sitting on this bus for the first time, the cold piercing my bones, the empty eyes of the children looking at me from the rearview mirror, and the whispers from the back row. "We're hungry." I got on the bus. The door slammed shut behind me. No one, but the seat was damp. There was sweat. There was a faint handprint on the window. There was a soft breathing sound from somewhere. I walked to my old seat in the 5th row near the left window. I didn't dare sit down. As soon as I touched the back of the seat, an image flashed through my mind like an electric shock. A stormy evening. A boy with messy hair sitting there, hugging his school bag, shaking. The bus didn't stop at the next stop. The driver didn't say a word. The windows started to close. And then, blood, screams, banging. I backed away. But there was no way out behind me now. The door was gone. There was no way out. I was trapped. The car's loudspeaker crackled. "The last passenger has returned. The trip will continue." I shouted, "I don't belong here. I want to get off." The voice on the loudspeaker chuckled. "No one belongs here, Daniel, but once you sit in the place of the dead, there is only one way to leave and drag another soul in to replace it." I paled. "Mr. Max, was he once dragged in like that?" "He was like you, but he chose not to betray anyone. So now he is still locked up with us." I looked back. A figure appeared in the last row of seats. He was wearing an old uniform. His hair was messy. His eyes were sad. I trembled. "Max?" He nodded. I whispered, I want to help you. How can you leave this place?" He looked at me, his eyes brimming with tears. "No one can truly leave unless someone takes my place, or someone confronts the very entity driving this vehicle and survives." The screech rang out. The bus moved. Outside was a world of black and white like a negative, everything upside down. The streets twisted. The windows glowed from within with invisible eyes. I saw a hearse driving parallel to the right. There was no dead person inside, just an empty coffin. The bus stopped. The door opened again, but this time a little girl got on. Long black hair, a face bruised as if beaten. I recognized her as the victim of an unsolved murder in my neighborhood last year. She sat in the 3rd row. I looked at Max, whispering, "How many more people have been dragged in here?" He pointed to the dashboard overhead. I read, "Current passengers, 21. Vacancies, 1. Seat 22. Reserved for the last living person." I was running out of time. I remembered what Margot had said. If you want to save the dead, you have to take their souls out of the haunted vehicle at the most sacred hour. I pulled out my phone. 3:03 a.m., the hour of the gates of hell. I stood up, took Max's hand. "Come with me." Max shook his head. "I can't, but you can take my soul out if..." "Go. You look the driver of this vehicle in the eye and say its true name. The true name is the only thing that can break the loop." The car screeched to a stop. The back door swung open. A tall creature stepped out. Not human, not a ghost. A shadowy figure in a driver's uniform with a pale face, no eyes or nose. He looked at me. I saw thousands of souls writhing beneath his skin. They whispered, "Call his name. Call his true name." I closed my eyes and whispered, "Azael," an ancient name in the Book of Demons, one of the guides of lost souls. The shadow screamed. The car shook violently. I grabbed Max's hit, screamed, "Now run!" A white light erupted. I woke up in the hospital. My mother hugged me, tears falling. "You've been missing for 16 days, Daniel. The police found nothing, no trace, only your backpack left at the bus stop." I looked out the window. Outside, a yellow bus rolled slowly down the street, but this time there was only the driver, no passengers. And I know Max left that place. I thought it was over. I thought getting off that ghost bus, that moving coffin, was the end. But no, the truly terrifying thing isn't when you're stuck in a nightmare. It's when the nightmare follows you into real life. I started dreaming. Not the messy dreams that everyone else had, but dreams with smells. The smell of burning gasoline, the smell of charred meat, the musty smell of old car seats, and the breathing of the spirits crawling around me. The first night after I was discharged from the hospital, I dreamed that I was sitting in a classroom. But the whole class had their backs to me. No one was there, just empty heads. The blackboard had written in blood, "One ticket left unpaid." I went to Mrs. Margot, the old psychic who lived down the street who had helped me before. She looked at me and turned pale. "You touched something you shouldn't have. That car isn't just a vehicle for souls. It's a door, one of the side passages between the living world and the spirit world. You broke the loop, Daniel, but what you dragged with you isn't what this side is." I swallowed. "Are they here?" "They're inside you." I started seeing strange kids around my neighborhood. They didn't talk. They wore old uniforms from the 70s. One day I saw one standing in front of my house at 3 a.m., staring into my window, even though I lived on the 3rd floor. When I called the police, they disappeared. One evening, I was walking home from work. The streetlights were flashing. The air was strangely cold. I saw a bus parked on the side of the road, no driver. Headlights off. I stood there mesmerized. Then a door opened, but this time no one came up, but something came down. A figure, tall, thin, with eyes all white. It looked at me. Its mouth didn't open, but I heard the echo in my head. "You think you're out?" I backed away. The bus ride only ended when all the passengers were put back in their seats. I began to lose sleep. Or worse, I slept, but I didn't know if I was awake or dreaming. One night, I went to the bathroom, turned on the light, and saw Max standing in the mirror. I jumped, turned around, no one was there. But in the mirror, Max was still there, whispering, "Daniel, don't trust anyone, not even yourself. Your shadow is no longer yours." I tried to look through the missing children's records related to the old bus, and then I found a strange name. Asher Delmar, the driver who drove the last bus before it disappeared in 1982. He was the sole survivor when the bus crashed into a lake, and his body was never found. They said he wasn't dead. He was just not human. A person who lived nearby Asher's family used to say, "I saw him walking around at midnight, muttering the names of students. And every time a child went missing, his house smelled of burning." Mrs. Margot gave me a small mirror engraved with ancient runes. She said, "If something comes looking for you, use this mirror to look at it. If there is no shadow in the mirror, it is dead. If there is a shadow but it is not the same as the person, it is something worse than death." I tried it that night. When I looked in the mirror in my room, I saw that I was sleeping, but I was still standing there. I screamed, but my scream was drowned out by something behind the door. The next day, I passed the parking lot of my old school. An identical yellow bus sat at the end of the lot, covered in dust. No license plate. On the back window, someone had written in handwriting, "You didn't leave, you just changed cars." I knocked on the window. The door opened. The seat was still damp. There was a human scent. And on the first seat, a torn old piece of paper was scrawled, "Until the end of the trip, all living people are reserve passengers." I left the city that night, driving through the night without stopping, without turning around. But in the rearview mirror, I saw a child sitting on the back seat. Long black hair, no face. He raised his hand and pointed forward. I looked up at the windshield, and then I saw a bus coming the other way, driverless. And for a split second, I heard the loudspeaker in my head. "Please step on, last passenger. Your ticket has been paid." There are things you shouldn't look too deeply into. Things like the ticket man. I used to think the ticket man was just part of some folklore, but no. He was real and he delivered me. After I ran away from the city, I moved to a small town in the north where there were no buses after 6 p.m. I rented a room in the attic of an old boarding house. Every night I heard a distant crackling sound like a broken loudspeaker. At first I thought it was the wind, but then one night it became clear. "No, 13 last stop open." I rushed to the window and looked down. There was no bus. Just a man in a long black coat standing under a lamppost. He held an old ticket. A smile. Toothless. I asked the landlady, and she simply replied, "If you see someone standing under a lamppost at midnight and there is no shadow, don't look too long, don't open the door, and absolutely don't accept anything he offers." I asked her if she had ever seen it. She was silent. But that night I saw her take out a small mirror and place it on the doorframe. On the mirror were engraved 2 words, "Skip the station." On the 3rd night I had a dream. In my dream I was standing in front of an old stone bus stop. No one was there, only the sound of footsteps rustling behind me. I turned around. A man with a mask made of human skin approached, holding out a reddish-brown ticket. I refused. He laughed, silently. But I heard it clearly in my head. "You don't have to accept it. You signed for it a long time ago. It's just that now it's my turn to collect the tickets." When I woke up, I found myself clutching a crumpled piece of paper. It was a bus ticket. Route 13, departure, 1:17 a.m. Destination, no way back. A handwritten note on the back of the ticket read, "Thank you for coming with us. See you at the next stop." I went to the town library and looked for any records of the conductor. An old notebook from the 1940s. It was read, "The conductor is a traveler between worlds. He is no longer human. He was once the first passenger, but chose not to get off the bus. He gives tickets to souls who do not yet realize they are dead or about to die. He cannot be destroyed. He can only be tricked into getting off." I went back to the old bus stop where my school used to be. It had been torn down, but the concrete was still there, and in the middle of the background was a circular burn mark, as if someone had been burned alive. Next to it was a rusted iron sign. "Final stop, no return." On an old pillar, a black and white photo taped with tape. Portrait of a man in a black coat with a mangled face. Beneath the photo, Asher Delmar, first ticket delivery man. That night I prepared everything. Silver mirror, salt, the talisman that Mrs. Margot had mailed. 1:13 a.m. I sat in my room, the lights were off, the window was open. 1:17 a.m. A knock came on the door. Knock, knock, knock. I didn't answer. Then the sound of paper being shoved through the door. A brand new ticket. Line 13. Seat 1A. Passenger name, Daniel Crow. On the back it said, "If you don't get on, we'll pick you up at your bed." I decided to do something crazy. Hand over the ticket. I printed a fake ticket, pasted it in someone else's name, Asher Delmar. Then I burned it in front of my house, chanting the words Margot had told me. A car without a passenger. A ticket without a soul. A guide tied to fate. At exactly 1:17 a.m., there was a scream outside. I looked through the crack in the door. The man in black was there, but he was curled up, holding himself by the neck. The ticket in his hand spontaneously combusted. Then he disappeared. I thought I had won. But the next day, in my mailbox, there was a package. Inside was a half-burned human skin mask and 3 tickets. Route 13, seats 2A, 2B, and 2C. Passenger name, Emily Crow. Sarah Crow. Amanda Crow. 3 people. My mother, my sister, and my daughter. I looked at the 3 tickets on the table. Emily, Sarah, Amanda. My mother, my sister, my daughter. Their names were printed as clearly on the tickets as if they were printed in coagulated blood. Seats 2A, 2B, 2C. Right behind me, right behind seat 1A where my name had been. I knew that the bus was not over for me. I went to Margot's house, the one who had warned me about the ticket delivery man. Her cabin was deep in the woods, where hundreds of wind chimes made of bird bones hung along the eaves. She looked at me with her eyes that were already cloudy. "It has already chosen its heir. If you don't come back, your blood will go with it. There's only one way to end it. Get on the bus one last time and don't get off. The last stop is blood, not earth." 1:17 a.m. I stood under the lamppost on the corner where it all began. The sky was dark, as if someone had covered it with a black cloth. The sound of a bus echoed in the distance. Clang, clang. The bus appeared, no lights, no driver. The door opened. Automatic. A foul wind blew out as if from a corpse forgotten in the basement. I stepped on. Seat 1A was empty. Behind me, 3 figures sat silently. I didn't dare turn around. I knew they weren't human anymore. The bus started moving. No one spoke. No one breathed. Only the static from the old loudspeaker rang out. "Thank you, passengers. Destination, Blood's End. No exit, no return ticket." I clenched the silver mirror in my hand. In it, the faceless man's shadow was reflected on the ceiling. He was crawling along the crack, close to the ceiling like a spider. I remembered what Mrs. Margot had said. The ticket dealer was once a man. He became a demon because he killed his own flesh and blood to live forever. I turned around. The 3 people sitting behind me were wearing human skin masks made from the faces of Emily, Sarah, and Amanda. I screamed, "It's not real. They're not my relatives." Immediately, all 3 of their heads fell off. The heads rolled down the aisle, opened their eyes, and laughed. The door slammed shut. The bus stopped in the middle of a bloody lot, where the last stop rose from the ground like a tomb. It wasn't a place. It was a living entity, a giant steel jaw opening its mouth, waiting for the passengers to enter. The loudspeaker blared, "Get off!" I stepped out. Blood was up to my knees. On the station walls, thousands of photos of former passengers with no eyes. In the middle of the station yard, the ticket dealer stood waiting. In his hand was a smoldering ticket. My name was Daniel Crow. He spoke in a voice like metal dragged on stone. "You think you can escape? You think you can fool me? I give you a choice. 1, enter the station with them. 2, replace me, become the ticket dealer." I laughed. In despair, I looked into the silver mirror. In it, he had no shadow. I did. "You can't choose for me." I threw the mirror at his face. The ticket dealer screamed, bursting into flames. His skin peeled off in patches, blood falling like scraps of paper. The whole station shook. The photos on the wall burned in a vein pattern. The bus roared one last time and exploded into ashes. I saw 3 relatives standing at the station door. No masks, no blood, just shadows. Emily whispered, "Go. Don't come back." I woke up in the same room. No bus, no ticket. Just a tire burn mark on the floor. But on the table, there was something waiting for me. A new ticket. Blank. Unmarked. And a note. "We'll need a new ticketer soon. Thank you, Daniel Crow. You made it through, but just this once." I moved to another state, lived in silence, never rode the night bus again, never stood under a lamppost at 1:17 a.m. Because I knew the last bus never ended. It was just waiting for the next person to get on. 5 years after my escape from the blood terminal, I still can't escape its shadow. My daughter Emily grew up in the silence of buried memories. She was all I had left. But every night I heard her calling my name in my dreams. "Father, Father." Emily began to have strange dreams of darkness, a savage laughter echoing in the cold space, a faceless figure stepping out of the darkness. She began to have insomnia. Her eyes gradually became dull, sometimes as if she was talking to someone I couldn't see. One day she asked me, "Father, if I'm not human anymore, can I save you?" I realized that fate had chosen her. Emily was not only my heir, but also the starting point of the demonic cycle. I tried everything to protect her, but I knew in my heart that we couldn't run away forever. One night, Emily disappeared. Before she left me a blank ticket, exactly like mine before. There was no name on it, just a line. "I will go in your place, so you can live freely." I looked out the window, saw the dim yellow lights of the bus stopped by the side of the road. The door opened. Emily stood there, her face suddenly turned into a devilish smile, her eyes flashing with a light that did not belong to this world. "Dad, the ride never ended, and now I am the new ticket delivery man." I knew this was just the beginning. The devil's blood still flowed in my veins, and every night on the empty streets, that bus continued its journey to find someone to take it next. I sat there in the dark, listening to the bus leave. My heart went cold, not from fear, but from knowing that my fate, my daughter's fate, and the fate of anyone who dared to board that bus was sealed with blood and death forever. If you hear the bus outside, don't look out the window. Don't get on. It could be your last bus.